The desperate call, the massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Assembly, had never witnessed such chaos. Representatives from 47 different star systems filled the translucent halls, their varied forms creating a rainbow of alien species. United by one terrible truth, the Shadowclaw Empire had finally set its sights on the peaceful Zephyrian colonies, and everyone knew what that meant. Ambassador Kira Deshin stood at the center podium, her crystalline skin flickering with the blue and silver patterns that indicated extreme distress among her people. The telepathic waves emanating from her mind carried the raw fear and desperation that words alone could never convey. Around her, the assembled delegates felt that emotion wash over them like a cold tide. "Honored representatives," Kyra began, her voice carrying the musical tones characteristic of her species, "the Shadowclaw Armada approaches our system. Our long-range sensors detect over 400 warships moving through hyperspace. They will reach Zephyrian Prime in less than 72 hours. A ripple of concerned murmurs swept through the assembly. The Shadowclaw Empire had been expanding aggressively for the past century, consuming entire civilizations and enslaving their populations. They were known for their brutality, their advanced weaponry, and their complete disregard for diplomatic solutions. When the Shadowclaw came calling, worlds either surrendered immediately or faced total annihilation. Minister Oleg Starweaver, representing the Altarian Confederation, clicked his mandibles nervously. His insectoid features showed genuine concern. As he addressed the assembly, "What military assets do the Zephyrians possess? Surely your people have some defensive capabilities?" Kira's crystalline form dimmed with shame. "We have maintained only a small patrol fleet, 37 vessels designed for system security and merchant protection. We are a peaceful civilization, Minister Starweaver. Our colonies house over 8 billion souls, but we have never prepared for war." The weight of those numbers settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. 8 billion lives hung in the balance, and everyone present understood what Shadowclaw occupation meant. The Empire didn't take prisoners for long. They harvested what was useful, enslaved who they could work to death, and eliminated the rest. Representative Nala Windhart of the Stellar Consortium spoke first. "The Consortium can spare 12 destroyers and a support cruiser. It's not much, but we're already stretched thin defending our own borders." "The Nexus Federation offers 8 frigates," announced another voice from across the chamber. "Our Council authorized immediate deployment." One by one, the major powers of the galaxy offered what they could. The tally grew slowly and pathetically. 15 ships here, 20 there, a handful of outdated cruisers from a minor system. When the final count was tallied, the combined galactic response totaled just 63 vessels against a Shadowclaw armada of 400. Kira felt her hope crumbling like sand. The mathematics were simple and brutal. 63 ships, many of them obsolete, against the most feared military force in known space. Her people would be slaughtered or worse. The beautiful crystal cities of Zephyrian Prime would be reduced to ash and rubble. "There must be someone else," she pleaded. Her telepathic distress now reaching even the non-psychic species in the assembly. "Some force we haven't contacted. Any ally who might aid us." The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. The major civilizations had already committed what they could spare. The smaller systems had nothing to offer but sympathy and promises. To remember Zephyrian culture after its destruction. Then, from the back corner, where the minor representative sat, a voice spoke up. "What about the Terrans?" The suggestion came from Minister Oleg, whose compound eyes were focused on a small datapad. "The humans from Earth. They've been granted observer status, but they do have a presence in this sector." A strange quiet fell over the assembly. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats or their equivalent. The humans were newcomers to galactic civilization, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Their world was classified as extremely dangerous by galactic standards, with crushing gravity, violent weather patterns, and atmospheric conditions that would kill most known species. The Deathworlders? Representative Windhart's voice carried a note of disdain. They're barely past first contact protocols. Their entire population is perhaps 6 billion across all their colonies. What could they possibly contribute? Their homeworld breeds aggressive creatures, added another delegate. Intelligence reports suggest they're constantly at war with each other. Hardly the type of allies we need. Minister Starweaver consulted his data files. According to recent surveys, they have some kind of space fleet, but it's primarily focused on system defense and cargo protection. Border patrol vessels at best. Kira listened to the dismissive comments with growing desperation. She had heard of the humans during her diplomatic training. Earth was indeed classified as a Class 12 death world, barely habitable by galactic standards. The few humans who visited other star systems were intense, focused beings with an unsettling tendency to survive situations that would kill most species. But survival skills and military capability were different things entirely. Even if they wanted to help, Representative Windhart continued, what could a minor species contribute against the Shadowclaw Empire? Perhaps they could evacuate. Few thousand civilians at best. The debate continued, but Kira was no longer listening to the dismissive voices around her. 400 Shadowclaw warships were racing toward her home. Her children, her people, billions of innocent souls faced extinction or slavery. Any help, no matter how small, was better than the inadequate response the galaxy had offered. Contact them, she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the political chatter. The assembly quieted, turning their attention back to the desperate Zephyrian ambassador. Contact the humans, Kara repeated, louder this time. If they have even a single vessel capable of carrying civilians to safety, it's more than my people had before this moment. I will not let pride or prejudice prevent me from seeking any possible aid. Minister Starweaver looked around the chamber uncertainly. Does anyone maintain diplomatic channels with the Terran government? A minor functionary near the back raised a tentacled appendage. There's a human vessel at Deep Space Station Omega-7. Some kind of diplomatic mission. They've been monitoring our communication networks as part of their observer status. Send the message, Kira ordered, her crystalline form now pulsing with desperate determination. Tell them we need help. Tell them 8 billion people will die if the galaxy abandons us. Tell them anything they can offer would be appreciated. The communication array in the assembly chamber hummed to life, sending subspace signals across the vast distances of space. The message was simple and direct, carrying Kira's desperate plea toward the human outpost, waiting at the galaxy's edge dot at Deep Space Station Omega-7. Captain Marcus Chun stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Meridian when the priority signal arrived. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray from years of deep space service, and his brown eyes carried the weight of a man who had seen too much of the galaxy's darker corners. Asterisk. Captain, his communications officer called out, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the Galactic Assembly. It's coded as a formal request for assistance. Chun moved to the command console, his expression growing more serious as he reviewed the tactical data that accompanied the Zephyrian plea. 400 Shadowclaw vessels, 8 billion civilians. The numbers were staggering, and the timeline was impossibly short. Sir, the communications officer continued, they're requesting any assistance we can provide. The message specifically states that even a single evacuation ship would be appreciated. Chun studied the star charts, showing the Shadowclaw fleet's projected path. Intelligence reports had been tracking the Empire's expansion for months, but This was the first time they had targeted a major populated system within the established galactic community. It was a test, he realized. The Shadowclaw wanted to see how the galaxy would respond to naked aggression. Open a channel to Earth Command, Chun ordered. Priority Alpha classification. We need to speak with Admiral Rodriguez immediately. The subspace link to Earth took several minutes to establish, during which Chun paced the bridge with growing urgency. When Admiral Sarah Rodriguez's face finally appeared on the main screen, her expression was already grim. News traveled fast. In military circles. Captain Chun, Rodriguez said without preamble, I assume this is about the situation in the Zephyrian system. Yes, ma'am. The Galactic Assembly has formally requested assistance. They're facing complete annihilation, and the combined galactic response is completely inadequate. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, her steel-gray eyes studying data that scrolled across her command screens. What's your assessment of the situation, Captain? It's a massacre waiting to happen, Admiral. The Shadowclaw Empire is testing galactic resolve, and they're about to discover that resolve is essentially non-existent. If we don't act, 8 billion people die, and the Empire gets the green light to expand wherever they want. And the galaxies. Response so far? 63 ships total. Mixed classes, many obsolete. Against 400 Shadowclaw warships. Chun's voice carried his disgust at the inadequate response. Rodriguez nodded slowly. Send a reply to the Assembly, Captain. Tell them help is coming. What should I tell them we're sending, ma'am? The Admiral was quiet for several seconds, and Chun could see her accessing classified military databases. When she looked up again, her expression had hardened into something that would have terrified the Shadowclaw commanders if they could have seen it. Tell them we'll handle it, Rodriguez said simply. The message traveled back across space to the Galactic Assembly, where Kira read it aloud to the gathered representatives. The Terran government has accepted our request for assistance. They respond that help is coming, and they will handle the situation. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Several delegates seemed shocked that the Deathworld species had agreed to involve themselves in galactic affairs. What are they sending? Asked Representative Windhart. How many ships? Kira consulted the message again, her crystalline features showing confusion. The response doesn't specify numbers or ship classes. It simply states they will handle the situation. Probably a patrol squadron, suggested Minister Starweaver. Perhaps 10 or 12 vessels. More than many expected from such a young civilization. The discussions continued, but most representatives assumed the human response would be token at best. After all, what could a species from a single dangerous world contribute to a crisis of this magnitude? On Earth, Admiral Rodriguez stood before the massive holographic display in the Strategic Defense Command Center deep beneath the Australian continent. A three-dimensional image showed the Zephyrian system in perfect detail, with red markers indicating the approaching Shadowclaw fleet. Show me the full tactical analysis, Rodriguez commanded. The display shifted, revealing intelligence data. That made her expression harden further. Images of burned worlds, enslaved populations, and systematic genocide filled the screen. The Shadowclaw Empire had been expanding for a century, growing stronger with each conquest. They had never faced serious resistance because galactic civilization was too fragmented and too civilized to respond with appropriate force. Ma'am, Colonel James Park stepped forward, the Galactic Assembly is treating this as a regional crisis. Their combined response is completely inadequate. How inadequate? 63 vessels total against a Shadowclaw armada of 400. It's not even a token resistance. Rodriguez studied the tactical projections. The Shadowclaw fleet was massive, but it was also typical of their doctrine. Overwhelming numbers, brutal tactics, and complete confidence that their enemies would break and run. They had been conquering defenseless civilizations for so long that they had forgotten what real military opposition looked like. "Recommendations?" she asked her staff. "The Fifth Fleet completed their training exercises last month," reported Admiral Thompson from the Strategic Command. "All vessels are supplied and ready for deployment. We could have them in the system within 70 hours. Rodriguez considered this. The Fifth Fleet was humanity's expeditionary force, designed specifically for rapid deployment to crisis zones. It represented more concentrated firepower than most star nations possessed in their entire military. Fleet composition? 300 vessels, Admiral. 12 dreadnoughts including the indomitable, 48 cruisers, 120. Destroyers, 60 carriers with full fighter complements, and 60 support vessels. The numbers hung in the air like a physical presence. 300 human warships represented the largest military force assembled in galactic space since the formation of the current political order. "Deploy the Fifth Fleet," Rodriguez ordered. Full deployment. Operation Sanctuary is now active. The command center erupted in controlled activity as officers began issuing orders that would reach across human space. The machinery of war that had been carefully maintained for exactly this kind of crisis awakened with frightening efficiency. Across the Sol system, shipyards that had been producing civilian vessels received priority military orders. Massive. Construction bays opened, revealing vessels that existed only in classified documents. The human military had been preparing for galactic-scale warfare since first contact, and now those preparations would be tested. On Mars, Admiral Chun Wei received deployment orders aboard the flagship Indomitable. A massive dreadnought was 3 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could reduce moons to asteroid fields. She had been designed to fight entire fleets alone, and her escort group consisted of ships that individually outgunned most galactic cruisers. "Navigation," Admiral Chun commanded. "Plot a course for the Zephyrian system. Maximum burn. We arrive when the Shadowclaw fleet enters the system. Aye, Admiral. 70 hours to target at maximum acceleration. Signal the fleet. We move in 1 hour." Throughout human space, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Carrier groups that had been conducting routine patrols received recall orders and began racing toward rally points. Destroyer squadrons abandoned their training exercises and headed for the rendezvous coordinates. Supply ships loaded with everything, from antimatter torpedoes to medical supplies prepared for the largest military deployment in human history. The Fifth Fleet's true composition was staggering and completely unknown to galactic intelligence services. Humanity had learned from Earth's harsh lessons that peace required strength, and strength required constant vigilance. While other species focused on trade and diplomacy, humans had quietly built the most advanced military force in known space. Back at the Galactic Assembly, the debate continued about the inadequate response to the Shadowclaw threat. Most representatives had returned to their systems to prepare for the expected Zephyrian massacre, but a few remained to coordinate the pathetic 63-ship relief force. The humans confirmed their participation, Minister Starweaver reported to the remaining delegates. Though they still haven't specified what they're contributing. Does it matter? Representative Windhart replied dismissively. Even if they send their entire fleet, how many ships could they possibly have? 50? 100 at most. The casual dismissal would soon prove to be the greatest miscalculation in galactic history. In less than 70 hours, the galaxy would discover what happened when Deathworlders decided to go to war. When Deathworlders answered the call, the Shadowclaw armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system like a plague of metal locusts. 400 vessels of various sizes spread across space in perfect formation, their dark hulls absorbing light and radiating menace. Commander Vex Darkscale stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death Maw, surveying what he expected to be another easy conquest. "Report," Darkscale commanded, his reptilian features twisted in anticipation of the slaughter to come. Long-range sensors detect the expected pathetic response. His tactical officer replied with obvious contempt. 67 vessels total. Mixed classifications, many obsolete. They're holding position around the fourth planet. Darkscale's forked tongue flicked out to taste the air, a sign of satisfaction among his species. 67 ships against 400. These civilized species never learn. Signal the fleet. We advance in standard formation. Leave enough survivors to serve as slaves, but make examples of any who resist. What Darkscale and his sensors had failed to detect was the ripple in spacetime occurring 30 million kilometers behind his fleet. The distortion was subtle, barely registering on conventional instruments, but it heralded the arrival of something unprecedented in galactic warfare. Admiral Chun Wei stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace with mathematical precision. 300 human vessels materialized in perfect battle formation, their advanced stealth systems having kept them hidden until the exact moment of their choosing. Fleet status report, Chun commanded, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had trained for this moment her entire career. All vessels report ready for combat, Admiral, her tactical officer responded. Weapon systems charged, shields at maximum. All fighter squadrons prepared for immediate launch. Chun studied the holographic display, showing both fleets and the pitiful galactic response, clustered around Zephyrian Prime. The mathematics were about to change dramatically, but the Shadowclaw didn't know it yet. Communications, open a channel. To the Shadowclaw flagship on all frequencies. The main screen flickered to life, showing Commander Darkscale's surprised reptilian features. Behind him, his bridge crew scrambled to process the sudden appearance of the human fleet. "This is Admiral Chun Wei of the Terran Fifth Fleet," she announced, her voice carrying across space with crystal clarity. "You are in violation of interstellar law and are hereby ordered to withdraw from this system immediately." Darkscale recovered quickly from his surprise, his scaled lips pulling back to reveal rows of predatory teeth. Terrans? The Deathworld primitives? How amusing. You bring your entire fleet against the might of the Shadowclaw Empire, and you still have fewer ships than we do. I'm giving you one opportunity to withdraw peacefully, Chun replied, her tone never changing from its professional calm. Leave. Now, and you'll live to regret this decision somewhere else. The Shadowclaw commander laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the subspace channel. Your species has been in space for barely 50 of your years. We have been conquering civilizations since before your people discovered fire. You have no idea what you're facing. Actually, Chun said, allowing the smallest smile to cross her features, I don't think you have any idea what you're facing. Communications. End transmission. All vessels, you are cleared for Operation Sanctuary. Show them what Deathworlders do when we go to war. The response was immediate and devastating. The human fleet moved with a coordination that defied belief. 300 vessels acting as a single organism. The Shadowclaw had never seen anything like it, because no galactic civilization had ever developed such precise military doctrine. Captain Zara Nightfang, serving as tactical officer aboard the Shadowclaw cruiser Bloodripper, watched her sensors in growing horror as the human fleet deployed. Commander, she called to her superior, their ships are moving in formations I don't recognize. Our tactical computers can't predict their attack patterns. Impossible, Commander Vex Darkscale snarled over the communication channel. No species could coordinate that many vessels with such precision. It's probably some kind of technological illusion. But it wasn't an illusion. The human fleet had trained for decades to fight as a single coordinated force. Every captain knew exactly where they needed to be. Every weapons officer had trained for this exact scenario, and every tactical decision had been planned and rehearsed. Countless times, the first wave of human destroyers screamed toward the Shadowclaw formation at velocities that made the enemy's targeting systems struggle to acquire locks. Behind them, the massive human carriers began launching fighter squadrons that moved like schools of deadly fish through the void of space. "Their fighters are too fast," Captain Nightfang reported as her ship's point defense systems failed to track the incoming human craft. "They're using some kind of advanced propulsion we've never encountered." The human fighters weren't just fast. They were smart. Each craft was equipped with artificial intelligence systems that could process tactical information and make decisions faster than any biological mind. They swarmed the Shadowclaw formation, striking vital systems with surgical precision before disappearing back into space. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display with professional satisfaction. The first phase of the battle was proceeding exactly as planned. Signal the Dreadnought Squadron. Begin bombardment of their command vessels. The 12 human dreadnoughts opened fire simultaneously, their main weapons unleashing energies that had never been seen in galactic warfare. The Shadowclaw flagship Death Maul, which had terrorized dozens of civilizations, simply ceased to exist under the concentrated barrage. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of plasma and debris. Commander Darkscale's death scream cut across all communication channels, followed by panic as his fleet realized their supposedly invincible commander had been vaporized in the opening seconds of the battle. "Impossible," whispered Captain Nightfang as she watched the tactical display. "Their weapons output is beyond anything in our databases. How did a minor species develop such advanced technology?" The answer was simple but terrible. Humanity had developed their technology, not through conquest, but through necessity. Earth's hostile environment had forced them to innovate or die, and when they reached space, they had applied that same ruthless efficiency to military science. Asterisk. Second wave of the human attack began before the Shadowclaw fleet could recover from losing their command ship. Human cruisers, each one more heavily armed than most galactic battleships, began systematically targeting the enemy's largest vessels. Their weapons were precise, devastating, and completely unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Fleet command to all vessels," came the panicked transmission from the Shadowclaw's second-in-command. "Retreat to minimum safe distance. Request immediate reinforcements from High Command." But there would be no retreat. The human fleet had positioned itself to prevent any escape, and their ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything the Shadowclaw possessed. What had been planned as a massacre was turning into a rout, but the humans were the ones doing the rooting. On Zephyrian Prime, Ambassador Kira Thishan watched the battle through her planet's sensor networks with amazement that bordered on disbelief. The telepathic communications from her people carried waves of shocked gratitude as they witnessed the impossible sight of their enemies being systematically destroyed. "The human fleet," she whispered to her aide. "How many vessels did they actually send?" "Our sensors count at least 300 ships," came the reply. "And they're all larger and more heavily armed than anything in our database. Ambassador, we may have severely underestimated the Terrans." The realization was spreading throughout galactic space as other civilizations monitored the battle. The humans hadn't sent a token force or a patrol squadron. They had deployed a full military fleet, and that fleet was demonstrating combat capabilities that rendered every other space navy obsolete. At the Galactic Assembly, the few remaining representatives watched the tactical feeds in stunned silence. Representative Windhart's mandibles clicked nervously as she processed what she was witnessing. 300 ships, she whispered. They brought 300 warships. How is that possible? Minister Starweaver was consulting his datapad frantically. Our intelligence estimates suggested they might have 50 vessels total across their entire civilization. These numbers don't match any of our projections. The truth was that galactic intelligence had fundamentally misunderstood human civilization. They had seen a young species from a dangerous world and assumed typical development patterns. They had never considered that a species forged in Earth's crucible might approach space colonization and military development differently than anyone else in the galaxy. Back in the battle zone, the Shadowclaw fleet was learning what it meant to face Deathworlders in combat. Their formation was collapsing as human tactics proved superior to everything they had encountered in a century of conquest. Ships that had terrorized entire star systems were being destroyed by weapons they couldn't understand and maneuvers they couldn't counter. Captain Nightfang found herself in command of the Blood Ripper when her commander was killed by a human fighter strike that somehow penetrated their shields and eliminated their bridge crew with surgical precision. She stared at her tactical display in growing horror as she realized the scope of the disaster. "Communications," she called to her surviving crew. "Send an emergency transmission to High Command. Full priority. Tell them the humans are not what we thought. Tell them we need to evacuate this system immediately." "Captain," her weapons officer replied, "our communication array was destroyed. We can't reach High Command." The systematic destruction continued for 2 more hours. The human fleet moved through the Shadowclaw formation like a force of nature, eliminating threats with mechanical efficiency. Their tactics were beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, combining individual ship excellence with fleet-level coordination that seemed almost supernatural. Admiral Chun monitored the battle from her command center, occasionally issuing orders, but mostly allowing her captains to execute the plans they had trained for. This was what human military doctrine was designed for: complete domination of any opponent through superior technology, tactics, and coordination. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "Shadowclaw fleet strength is down to 47 vessels. Many are attempting to surrender." "Signal all surrendering vessels to power down weapons and shields," Chun ordered. "Deploy boarding parties to secure prisoners and intelligence. Any ship that attempts to escape or reactivate weapons is to be destroyed immediately." The Battle of Zephyrian Prime was over. In less than 4 hours, the human Fifth Fleet had accomplished what the entire galaxy thought impossible. They had not just defeated the Shadowclaw Armada. They had annihilated it. Of the 400 vessels that had entered the system expecting easy conquest, fewer than 30 remained operational, and those only because they had surrendered quickly enough to avoid destruction. Captain Nightfang found herself aboard. Human vessel, the first Shadowclaw officer to be taken prisoner by the Terrans. She stared at her captors with a mixture of fear and amazement. They looked so ordinary, these Deathworlders. Bipedal, relatively small, with none of the obvious physical advantages that marked most warrior species. "How?" she asked the human officer who was processing her surrender. "Your species has been in space for 50 years. How do you possess such advanced military capabilities?" Lieutenant Commander Sarah Torres looked at the captured alien with something approaching sympathy. "You made the same mistake everyone else makes. You assumed that being new to space meant being weak. You didn't consider what kind of species could survive on a Class 12 death world long enough to develop space travel." The implications of that statement would echo throughout galactic civilization for generations to come. Earth wasn't just dangerous because of its environment. It was dangerous because of what that environment had created. Humanity had learned to wage war not through conquest, but through survival, and their approach to military science reflected that harsh education. News of the victory spread across space at the speed of light, carried by subspace transmissions that reached every corner of galactic civilization. The impossible had happened. A young species from a single dangerous world had deployed a fleet that made every other military force look obsolete. On Zephyrian Prime, the celebrations lasted for days. 8 billion people had been saved by beings they had never met, from a world most of them couldn't even locate on a star chart. Ambassador Kira addressed her people through planetary communication networks, her crystalline form glowing with gratitude and amazement. "The humans came when no one else could," she announced. "They brought not just ships, but salvation. We owe them a debt that can never be repaid, and we must ensure the galaxy never forgets what they did for us." At the Galactic Assembly, an emergency session was called to address the implications of the battle. Representative Windhart stood before her colleagues, her previous dismissive attitude replaced by something approaching awe. "We must reconsider everything we thought we knew about the Terrans," she announced. "They are not a minor species. They may be the most militarily advanced civilization in known space." Minister Starweaver consulted his updated files, his compound eyes reflecting his amazement. "Intelligence reports suggest they have multiple fleets of similar size. If these estimates are correct, humanity possesses more military capability than the rest of the galaxy combined." The realization was staggering and terrifying. For decades, galactic civilization had dismissed the humans as an interesting but minor addition to their community. Now they understood that the Deathworlders had been quietly building the most formidable military force in known space. Admiral Chun received new orders from Earth Command as her fleet began the journey home. The message was brief but significant. Mission accomplished. The galaxy now understands what it means to ask Deathworlders for help. The victory at Zephyrian Prime would be remembered as the moment humanity announced itself as a major galactic power. More importantly, it would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned that when you ask for help from a species forged in Earth's crucible, you don't get a token response. You get everything they have. The Shadowclaw Empire, which had terrorized galactic civilization for a century, would never recover from the destruction of their primary fleet. Other aggressive species took note of what had happened when predators encountered apex predators. The balance of power in known space had shifted permanently, and everyone understood the new reality. Humanity had answered the call for help, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. The age of easy conquest was over. The Deathworlders had made sure of that.